delighted to have the opportunity to talk to you today about the role of Brighton Recycling and some work we've been doing on deposit return schemes. I will touch on a little bit more about extended producer responsibility and how the various changes that are coming down the line will impact recycling and will impact what happens to the food packaging products that members here, that the audience is responsible for putting onto the marketplace. So a little bit about Brighton Recycling. We either collect or receive recyclables from 50% of the houses in Northern Ireland, and we also do a number of other activities that are kind of more traditional waste management and recycling activities for councils as well. We are part of Brighton Charitable Group. That puts us in an interesting category of being a social enterprise. We are as interested in the outcomes of what we do, primarily interested in the outcomes of what we do, opposed to merely making profit. And across the group, we provide a lot of services for people in need of support. Brighton Recycling is across Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, and Donegal, and we have a couple of operations in North Wales as well. Okay, I just want to explain a little bit about the two types of household recycling that we're involved in. We receive material collected from councils and blue bins. This is called commingling. The recycling comes to our depot in Mollusk, and we use a series of mechanical and manual sorting techniques to produce an end product. So you can see the picture on the right-hand side is a screen. We have a number of screens which separate paper and cardboard out from three-dimensional containers. And then the following on picture is the containers leading up to a magnet, an eddy current, and an optical sorter which takes out steel cans, aluminium cans, and then plastic bottles. Interestingly, the following picture, which shows the paper on the belt and the final quality pick, was taken back in about 2006 when there was a lot of newspapers. They simply don't exist in the same quantity anymore, so that rather dates that picture. The approach to recycling that we've been instrumental in establishing and is our preferred approach is the use of wheelie boxes, which you can see an example on the top left. 3 boxes stacked onto a trolley. If you live in Newtownabbey, parts of Belfast, parts of Castlereagh, you'll be familiar with this. We then have our own vehicle with different compartments, so we're putting different materials into separate compartments on the vehicle and bringing it back to our depot. And the reason for that will be become apparent shortly, but it is a system which has formed the Welsh blueprint for collections, and Wales is first in the UK, second in Europe, and third in the world in their recycling rates. So delighted to have been associated with them establishing that approach and its success. We're very interested in where the materials end up and their end destination. So on the left-hand side, you can see that about just over 25% of what we receive from councils gets recycled in Northern Ireland. Over 60% elsewhere in GB, and about 12% is exported either to Europe or the rest of the world. When we collect using our curb sort approach with our wheelie boxes and compartmentalized vehicles, you can see that we are achieving over 85% is actually recycled in Northern Ireland, and smaller amounts than exported outside. We can see 86% of materials actually being recycled in Northern Ireland. That includes paper, which is sold to Huhtamäki, and they turn it into egg boxes. Our glass goes to Ensark in Derry Lynn, back into glass bottles can, and our plastics goes to Cherry, who use the HDP to manufacture agricultural and civil engineering piping. We do have some Key problem materials which consistently come up. I'm glad to say the one on the bottom left, there's a solution to already, and we're now seeing an awful lot of grey trays coming into the system, which means that the problem of black trays is now disappearing. Pringles, I'm afraid have been kind of rather pointed out as being one of the key problem materials. It's a mixture of different types of materials in the system. It's very difficult to recycle something that contains plastic and metal and paper. And one that we're worried about that's becoming increasingly common is where paper and cardboard particularly are mixed together. This is one example, which is a sandwich box, but there's lots of other ones where companies are switching away from plastic and going to paper which is laminated with plastic, and that makes them incredibly difficult to recycle. And I would hope that some decisions are made by companies in the supply chain to avoid those types of packaging. Okay, so this rather busy slide. At this point in time, councils are predominantly responsible for the cost of and providing recycling services. There's some support through the packaging recovery node system, which is obviously one of the things that's being reviewed through extended producer responsibility. We're going to move from one predominantly responsible series of organizations and councils through to inclusion of DRS and extended producer responsibility. So the introduction of DRS and extended producer responsibility alongside councils in this mix will mean some significant changes in the way we actually carry out recycling. We'll see that RVMs, reverse vending machines, will start to take drinks cans, plastic bottles, glass bottles, and that takes about 40% of the materials away from what was previously being collected through the recycling system. However, the recycling system will still be responsible for collecting the items that aren't collected through reverse vending machines. Not every item will be redeemed by householders. The councils are still also responsible for collecting items that fall outside of scope of both DRS and extended producer responsibility, such as non-packaging fibre, i.e. paper, food waste, garden waste, and so on. So there is a huge possibility for clear thinking around how these systems can be aligned to ensure that the best possible outcomes are come to. Otherwise, we could end up with quite a confusing, conflicting process involved. Bryson became very interested in the impact of DRS, particularly on curbside, and would note that we're not aware of anywhere that's had DRS introduced where there's been a well-developed curbside recycling infrastructure already in place. It's a big impact on consumers because they're going to have to start taking, as I said, nearly 40% of what they actually currently put out for doorstep collection, bring it to a reverse vending machine, a central point. We're also concerned that some of the items that are left behind will be hard to recycle. An example is aluminium foil, which doesn't fall within DRS. Will still be collected for recycling at the curbside, but really it needs to be blended in with drinks cans to be recycled. So we started to consider, well, would it be possible to integrate a DRS into the household collection service? We spoke to CryptoCycle, who are a tech provider in this area, and we're trying to understand it from their direction, and agreed to set up a trial in Whitehead, supported by Mid and East Antrim Borough Council. And I was glad to say Minister Poots was also there for the launch of that. It's simple in that the householder has an app on their phone. They're able to scan items and redeem them from home. And I'll explain a little bit more about how this works in a minute. It was limited in what it was trying to do. It was trying to really demonstrate how the digital DRS could work, rather than in terms of its the app side of things and how customers would interact with it. There were limitations in that it was a reward rather than a deposit, and we weren't trying to prove some of the more technical issues involved in labeling up containers with QR codes. I'm very glad that the local spa was prepared to support this and work with us. So basically it worked by a householder downloading an app. They would then put a QR code sticker on their recycling bin, and when they bought an item, when they buy an item, it had a separate QR code on it, which they would scan their recycling bin, which demonstrated that they were now at an authorized recycling point, and be able to redeem the deposit directly through their phone. We're interested in this because we could see that there's a huge potential to reduce the cost. Reverse vending machines are expensive, and the system would integrate into an existing recycling system. Opportunity to decrease litter, because we could have an extended number of collection points. All you need is a recycling bin with an authorized QR code on it. Reduce fraud. We could have consistency across the UK. More accessible people without cars. Very popular for customers in terms of convenience. Reduce waste crime, and create market information for brands, amongst other things. The trial was launched at the end of September and finished there at the end of January, and Queen's University are working with Cryptocycle to come out and we'll produce some more detail on the results. But here are some sort of high level kind of indicators of some of the early results that are coming from that. So it was well used. Over 20% of the householders in Whitehead signed up to do this, which is a great figure for a reward scheme of this type for a temporary period. And it was very strongly liked. A lot of people support the concept of DRS, 86% of people. 87% of people said that they would like to see DRS extended to more than just drinks containers, interesting, which is a possibility to this approach. And only 18% of people said that the introduction of RVMs would make a difference to their use for DRS, i.e. collecting from home would be sufficient. And only 5% disagreed with the idea of being able to recycle their items from home. So really to bring that to a conclusion, we have a huge opportunity to look at the way DRS, extended producer responsibility, and the way recyclables are collected can integrate together to produce a very streamlined and effective system. I'd say we're at a probably once in a generational opportunity to influence the way these things work. And for the audience here, who would predominantly produce food packaging, at the end of the day, these whole changes, especially extended producer responsibility, will make you effectively responsible for both the cost and also the way recycling happens. You'll be bearing the cost. You'll be able to make changes to the way your packaging works to keep your own costs down, to keep the cost down to the householder, and also more importantly, demonstrate that the packaging that you produce is actually recyclable through this scheme. So I hope that you embrace this excellent opportunity. Delighted that we are seeing such big changes, and let's make sure that we do it right. Thank you.